Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I really want to show you how to do 5 basic wire wrapping techniques if you're really a beginner basically. So the reason why I call these basic techniques is because it's easier to use 2 strands and 3 strands of wire. As you start to add more strands of wire, it kind of gets more complicated and a little bit more fiddly. So we're starting off with a couple of weaves today. There's 2 here that are using 2 strands of wire and 3 that are using 3 strands of wire. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you, I can show you them now obviously as a little set here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you just about an inch or so of each one, just to give you an idea of how to do it and what tools to use to kind of make them as neat as possible. So we are going to start with 2 strands of wire, and what I generally do is I don't have lots of different gauges of wire because I find that these 2 gauges, you might have heard me say this before, these 2 gauges are the ones I use the most. So to start off with, we are going to use a 20 gauge wire. I've got 20 gauge in silver and I've also got the 20 gauge in antique bronze. So I'm going to show you how the 2 different wires kind of look as well when we do these weaves. So the next one we've got is a 26 gauge, and again I've got a 26 gauge in both silver and antique bronze. And what I'm going to do to start off with is use the silver wire to do one of these 2 strand weaves. I'm going to pick this one here and I'll move that to the side, and what I'm going to do is cut a little length off, and I'm going to show you the 2 strand weaves so that you get a little idea of what we need to do. Because when I first started, believe me, they were very messy. If you looked close up, it would be all wiggly and all over the place, and it just takes practice, really. You've just got to keep going, keep practicing, and eventually you'll get them really neat and looking fantastic. So I'm just going to cut off a little length of wire, and I'm going to show you this first weave. So this is the weave I'm going to do here. And what we do is we do a bend around both strands and then just around one. So we do a 2 and then a 3. And with this weave, I'll explain that a little bit more as we go along. But with this weave, you can change it up quite a bit as well. So if you practice it like this first, that'd be great. But then we're going to, I can explain to you how to do it differently as well. So it just changes the weave a little bit just by changing the way that the numbers that you use. So what I can do with this is, because I know that I don't need to cut it off because I'm not adding a bead on the end or anything like that, I can just leave it on the reel and cut it off when I need to once I'm done. So what I generally do is I just wrap it around the little knob at the top. Otherwise it goes flying off the reel and we get too much wire. And to start this weave, all I'm going to do is hold the 2 pieces together like this. And I'm going to start by wrapping this twice around our 2 wires, so it holds them nice and firmly together. This bit doesn't matter. You can leave that bit kind of straggling over there and neaten it up later if you need it for part of your weave. But for now, what I'm doing is just showing you how we're going to begin this weave. So what I've done there, if you can see, is I've just done 2 wraps, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do 3 wraps around just 1 wire. So that's why I called it a 2-3. So we go 1, 2 and 3 around there, and then I just use my nail just to push it right down, because what we want to do is make sure that it all kind of links together, because often when you first start you can just wrap it and not bother to kind of move it down, and it just makes it look a little bit messy. So I just use my fingers, but what we can do as well is take our flat-nosed pliers and just squeeze it together, just to show, just to get them all nice and close together like that. And then we're just going to continue like that for a little bit to get our pattern forming. So 2 around the 2 wires and 3 around the 1. And as I described to you before, you can change this up and you can do it 2 and 5, or you can do it 3 and 5, depending on what you want to do. It just creates a slightly different pattern. So have a little play around with it. This is the one I kind of like to do. I think it looks really pretty. But yeah, you can change it up as much as you like. So I'm just going to do another few here. So I'm going to go 2 around that one. So we've got 2 around the both, making sure we squeeze them together because we want them to be really nice and tight. And then 3 around the bottom. So as you can see, our little pattern is starting to form. So I'm just going to keep that going a little bit longer just to show you what it looks like. And then what I generally do is I get my flat nose pliers again and I just squash it down so it kind of flattens it out a little bit, because it just kind of neatens it and makes it look prettier. So I'll show you before I flatten it and after I flatten it, and we'll see if we can see a difference. You might not see much of a difference, but I can. So again, 2 around both, 3 around the bottom. And this is a nice simple one to start with, just to get yourself going and make it all nice and even. And I just keep pulling the wires straight as I go so that we don't get lots of kinks in it. And I'll just keep going a little longer. Some people do actually like to use another tool where it kind of clasps the wire at the end and it keeps it steady. But I find that can be quite restricting, so I don't use it, but it's entirely up to you. If you decide that that's what you want to do, go ahead and do it. But I just use my fingers and hold on to it really nice and tightly to keep it together. But that tool is available if you want to get one. So I will continue with this a little bit further and then I'll show you the next one, because we don't need to go too far with this. So I'm just pushing it down, make sure they're all really nice and close together, pushing it down with my fingers and then continuing along. Right, let's do a couple more. Right, there we go. We've just got a little section of our pattern there. You can see that coming along really pretty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get these pliers again and I'm just going to go along and I'm just going to flatten it down and straighten it all out. So as you give it a little squeeze, it kind of just finishes it off and makes it look really nice. You can see the difference that made there, but it seems to almost be a little bit shinier as well. So that is our first little weave. And if I bring this one back in, this is what it looks like in antique bronze. And obviously you can do it in copper, you can do it in the gold colour. There's lots of different colours that you can use, and it actually looks slightly different with each one. So that's the first weave, and now we're going to go onto our second weave. And this one is again using 2 strands, and this one's in silver. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to continue this weave on from where I started the last one. So this one I wrap 2 times around the 2 wires, and then I do a 1 and a 1. It's hard to explain, and that's why it's easier to show you. So I've already got my 2 wraps from the previous one that I was doing. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 1 around the bottom, and then I'm going to bring the wire over the top piece So that if you can see, I've got to hold this really steady for you so that you can see this. There's one wrap around one wire and one wrap around the other. And then I bring this wire back and I do the same again. So I do one wrap around the one closest to me and one wrap around the one furthest away. So it creates a different type of pattern. And then we do our 2 around the main one again. Sounds really complicated when I'm trying to explain it, but it works. It looks really pretty. And if you're watching what I do with my hands, then you should be able to pick it up. So I'm going to do that one again. So we go once round the wire closest to me here, and then we pull it this way and once through the middle and around the top wire. And then we do the same again, closest to me and furthest away. And there, if I push it down with my fingers again so they're all really nice and close, and do 2 around the main one. So I'm going to continue that for a little while just to show you what the pattern looks like, and then we'll move on to the 3 different weaves that we make with 3 strands of wire, which gets slightly more complicated, but these are all fairly simple little weaves that we can do that are really effective when we're working with our wire. Right, wrap this one. So I'm going to show you again, once around the one closest to me and once from further away, and again kind of like a figure of 8 pattern that we're doing around the wire, and then 2 wraps again. Now I need to bring this closer to my face because I can't actually see what I'm doing, so I'm just going to bring it up so I can have a look and make sure that I'm pulling it really nice and close together, and it creates a really nice pattern actually on both sides with this. You can actually do it either way. So what I kind of like to check is that it's looking really neat on both sides, because sometimes when I wrap it around a stone, I want to give it a twist and use the other side of it. So you can work on that, make sure that it's nice and neat on both sides. I'm going to do a couple more of this, and then I'll show you how the finished one actually looks. Hopefully I have explained that sensibly enough that you can understand it. And there you go, you can actually see now where I've transitioned from one to the other, and that looks really pretty as well. So I also am going to go over this and squeeze it down. It just flattens it out a bit and makes the pattern look even better. So there you go with that one. That's our second weave. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to cut this one off, because what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the ones where we use 3 strands of wire. I'm going to move this out of the way. So that's our second weave, and I'll bring it back in just so that you can see it close up and with more of it there. And the silver just sparkles really beautifully. I mean, they all do. I think the silver looks really nice in that one. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on to the ones where we use 3. Now, as you can see, there's a really simple one in the middle, which is basically just a plait, but sometimes people get a little bit confused with that. So what I'll do is I'll show you how to do that one first, and then I will show you the other 2. So I'm getting a little bit of a inner twist here. I'll sort those out. There we go. So this is moving on to 3 strands of wire, and I'm going to do these with antique bronze just to show you the difference, what the different wires look like, and maybe it'll help you make a decision on what colour you want to use. So 2, got our 3 pieces. I don't need to be exact at the moment because I'm just showing you. It's just a little tutorial on showing you. I'd normally be, if I was making something, I'd probably be measuring and doing a few things, but we don't really need to at the moment. So as I said earlier, some people will get a little clamp and they will clamp these 3 in and then it will keep it in place. But to be honest, I don't think you really need one. I just use my fingers, hold on to the ends, and I start to do my plaiting. So most of us will know, if we've got long hair, how to do a plait. But it looks really effective with this. You can do it in, you can use it for a ring, you can use it for a nice bracelet, you can attach things to the sides of it. It's a really nice little easy one to do, but ends up being quite effective. So it can be a little bit fiddly to start off with, but you can always cut off the bits that you don't need or want and then continue as you go. So as you know, with the plait, we have 3 strands and the left one goes over the centre and becomes the centre, and the right one goes over the centre and becomes the centre, and that's just how we plait. And if you keep looking, you can make it tight or loose, you can do it however you like. I like to try and make it as even as possible, so as I go I just keep checking that I'm not pulling one too tight or making any mistakes there, and we just plait the wire together. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what you can actually do with these. So as you can see, that makes quite a pretty little pattern, and what you can do is you can get another piece of wire and attach it next to it all the way along on both sides and turn it into a really pretty little ring, which I might show you a tutorial of at some point. But that's the idea with the plait. I'll show it you again in silver, and then we'll move on to the other one. So there's the silver one, which is really pretty and sparkly. And then our next weave is this one, and this one is again using 3 strands. And what we do is we get, well, I'm going to get the 26 gauge wire now. So what we do is we always use the thicker wire as our main strands and the thinner wire to then start wrapping with. So again, we can leave it on the reel, and I've wrapped it already around there so we don't end up getting loads of wire flying off all over the place. And with this one, what we want to do is we want to wrap it 3 times around 2 strands. So 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to get the other one, we're going to join the other one in, and we're going to bring the wire that you've just wrapped underneath and then wrap around the other 2. So the center one always gets wrapped, but the ones on either side don't. So 1, 2 and 3. Now with this one, it is quite important to actually squash them together and use our tool to flatten it down, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what it looks like when you don't flatten it, and then I'll show you what it looks like when you do flatten it. It really does make quite a bit of difference with this one. So we've got to try and stay nice and neat, because unfortunately when you are doing this, if you are going to sell them, it is quite obvious when you get all messy and things get a kink in and things like that. So it's really important when you're practicing just to keep checking it, making sure you're being neat and tidy, pulling it nice and tight, keeping it firm, and pushing them down all the time with your fingers or with a tool. So we're going to go 1, 2, 3. And again, this one can be changed up. You can just do 2 wraps on each. You can do 1. One's not quite as interesting. You can do 4, alternate it, but this is just what I like to do, because I think it looks really effective having played around with the different combinations. So I'm going to do a little bit of this and show you what it looks like before we flatten it, and then I'm going to flatten it and I'll show you the difference. So as you can see, I am doing 3 wraps around these, and then I'm moving so that the center one is always wrapped. I'm doing 3 wraps around those 2. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to push it down and hold it for you. So if you have a look at what it looks like now, you can see there that it kind of bunches up a little bit. And then when I get my tool and I squeeze and I flatten it down, you can really see the difference there. So that makes a really big difference, and it changes the look of the weave. So obviously you can leave it without flattening it, but if you want it to look slightly neater, then I suggest that you do a nice squeeze down with your pliers, just to make it look really nice and neat and flat. Continue with that one just a little bit further, and then I'm going to show you the final one, our 5th weave. Continuing on from this one. There we go. I'm going to show you again. I'm going to do a little bit of this without flattening it and just show you again. And then we'll do our final one. So there we are again. I'm going to shove that down. Ooh, put a little bend in it. Sometimes you want to do that. There you go. As you can see, the flattened part and the non-flattened part really does make a difference. It's almost like a different weave. So now we're going to move on to our final one. I'm going to bring it in and show you on this long piece here. This one is similar to the one that we did with the 2. So we're doing 2 wraps, and then we're wrapping each item individually, each strand individually. So I'm going to show you that one and see how we do that one. So I'm straightening out the wires a little bit, and I'm just going to show you this final piece. I don't want it to come shooting off the wire again, off the reel. Right, so straightening out the wires all the time, because it does look messy when it starts to get kinks in it. So what I'm going to do is do 2 wraps, around the 3 strands. Like so. And then I'm going to do what I did in the 2 strands, but with the 3. So I wrap it once around there, then I take it up the middle and wrap it around the middle one, and then I take it over the next one and I wrap it over that one. And then we're going to come back on ourselves. I'm going to go over the top one and then twist it back over the middle one and back over the one closest to me. And that creates a really nice little pattern. And I'll do a bit more so that you can see the pattern develop and show you how to do that again. So we go twice around all 3. And then round the one closest to me, middle one, furthest away. And again, coming back on ourselves, furthest away, central one, and closest to me. Now, so that I can see what I'm doing, I'm going to bring it in closer. And again, exactly the same with this one. We need to give it a little bit of a squash down and flatten and pull it nice and close. I don't always, it's a little tip, it may be just because I'm clumsy, but I don't always use a tool to push it down, because sometimes I just use my fingers because it's good enough. Because if you do this and you try and push it down with a tool, you can sometimes scrape the wire and end up changing the colour of it, causing a little imperfection, and you don't want that to happen because it is quite obvious sometimes. So really I use my nails to push it down, but I use these to flatten it. And as you can see, it does make a really big difference to the pattern, makes it look really nice and clean and neat. So I'll do a little bit more of that just to show you again how to do it. And then that's our 5 basic weaves. It really is just a case of having a practice, making sure you keep pushing it down, taking your time, and you'll get really good and really neat. And it's really effective, looks so pretty on all the different things that we make. So there's that weave. As you can see, I'll bring the other one in so you can see it longer again. Really, really pretty one, this one. And all of these you can do separately, you can combine them, you can, as you might be able to see with the one I'm wearing, I've combined a few different ones to create this piece. But if you wanted to, you could continue along using one weave, and then you can change on the same piece of wire, you can change to a different weave. If you take a look at my the one about how to wrap a tumble stone and a gemstone that's not flat and neat, that one I just do a continuous wrap of 3 different types and then just wrap it around the stone, and it looks really, really effective and really pretty. So if you keep practicing and give it a go, let me know if that was easy enough to follow and whether you understood what I was talking about. That would be great. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the tutorial today, and I would love you to leave me a like or subscribe if you want to see more of these tutorials, because I will be uploading one a week, and I really look forward to hearing from you.